to determine which is the limiting and excess reagent here. So I know for every 1 mole of sulfur, I use 4 moles of chlorine gas. So what I'm going to do is, it doesn't matter which one I start with. I want to show you both ways that I get the same answer. I'm just going to start with my 200 grams of sulfur first. I'm going to start with 200 grams of sulfur, and that's S8. Oh, that's not straight. And I'm going to turn it into moles. So, and essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, if I have 200 grams of sulfur, how many grams of chlorine will I react completely with? And then I'm going to compare it with how much chlorine I have. So I'm going to go from grams of sulfur into moles of sulfur. Then I can make my molar ratio from, for every 1 mole of sulfur I use, I will need 4 moles of chlorine. And then I can go from moles of chlorine into grams of chlorine and compare how many grams of chlorine that I will need if I react all 200 grams of sulfur. So if I have 200 grams of sulfur, how many grams of chlorine will I need to react all of it? So I'm going to go from grams of sulfur into moles of the sulfur. And sulfur weighs 32.06. And in 1 mole of S8, I will have 8 moles of sulfur. So that's 256.48. 256.48 grams of S8. So now I'm in, my grams of S8 cancel out. Now I'm in moles of S8. So now I know that for every 1 mole of S8, I will need 4 moles of chlorine gas to react with it. And so now my moles of S8 cancel out. Now I'm in moles of chlorine gas. So I know that in 1 mole of chlorine gas, I have, let's see, chlorine is 35.45 times 2. I have 2 moles of chlorine, so that would weigh 70.90 grams of chlorine. And my moles of chlorine gas cancel out. So now I can do this, and I can say 200 divided by 256.48 equals a number. Multiply that by 4, and then multiply that by 70.90, and I get 221.1 grams of chlorine gas. Now, I compare that with, I only have 100 grams of chlorine gas. So I don't have enough chlorine gas to react 200 grams of S8. So my limiting reagent is going to be chlorine gas, because if I react all 200 grams of S8, I will need 221.1 grams of chlorine, but I only have 100 grams. Okay, so that I won't react all of that. So then the other way, let's say that I had chosen 100 grams of chlorine gas first. Okay, so now my question is if I have 100 grams of chlorine gas, 100 grams of chlorine gas, how many grams of S8 will that react? Okay, so if I had 100 grams, now remember, I'm just showing if you had chosen 100 grams first that you'll come out with the same answer. It doesn't, all you have to do is do one of these, not both, just one. But let's just say, instead of starting out with 200, let's say I started out with 100. So I start with 100.0 grams of chlorine gas. And I know that 1 mole of chlorine gas weighs 70.90 grams of chlorine gas. I know that for every 4 moles of chlorine gas, I will use 1 mole of S8. And I know that 1 mole of S8 weighs 256.48 grams of S8. And so my grams of chlorine cancel out, my moles of chlorine cancel out, my moles of S8 cancel out, and I'm in moles of S8. So if I have 100 grams of chlorine divided by 70.90, take that, divided that by 4, then multiply by 256.48. That gives me 90.44 grams of S8. So if I react all of my chlorine gas, I will use 90.44 grams of S8, but I have 200 grams of S8. I will only use up 90 grams of S8, right? So that means that I won't use up all of my S8. My limiting reagent is chlorine. So I still get the same answer on that.